Right, filters and effects. Back in the day when we used to use film, you had to use certain filters to get certain effects on the front of your camera. There was all sorts of different filters out. They're all weird and wonderful stuff that you could play with. But the thing about doing that, the thing about putting a filter on front of your camera when taking the shot, it means that the original shot is lost forever. Whatever filter you put on the front, that effect will stay on there forever. So you don't have a plain blank image to work from. The beauty of doing all of your filter work in Photoshop is that you can start off with a raw image, with just a standard image, and then start to add filter effects in digital imaging, which is obviously a lot better because you've always got the original to revert back to. There are certain filters that you can't reproduce or replicate in software. One of those is the polarizing filter, so I would recommend that you get hold of a very good quality polarizer filter, and the theory goes that you buy good glass to put on good glass. If you've got a good lens and you put a poor quality filter on it, you've just ruined the effects of that good lens. So really get the best you can pay for when getting a polarizer, something like B&W or Hoya, someone like that, but get the top of the range if you can. Another one is things like the starburst. You can't really mimic that in Photoshop or anything, so if you really want that effect, then you have to get the filter and try and use the Cokin range for that. Other filters, I can't really think of any off the top of my head at the moment, but when looking at adding filters and effects to photos and images, there is so much available to you within Photoshop and all these other kind of any other software you've got. There's always plugins and add-ons that you can use to make effects from. I'm going to show you a couple here. I'm going to first of all work in Photoshop, and I'm going to show you first of all what comes free with Photoshop. If you go into Image Mode, Adjustments, and then Photo Filter, there is a very basic set of filters here. So the warming filter, 81, 82, and 81 and 85. They're very similar to the filters you can get to screw on the front of your camera, such as the warming filters or the UV filters, that kind of thing. It just adds a very subtle warming effect to the image. So for this shot that's quite blue, it adds a bit of a golden glow, which kind of suits the image. There's also effects such as you can cool the image down. You've got red, orange, all different colours underwater, which kind of gives a greeny look. They're not fantastic, but once you've done them, you can obviously up the intensity and the density of it. But really, it's nothing major. You know, it's just very simple photo filters that you can add to have some subtle effects to your images. What they've also got are the filters here. If we go down to the filter gallery, these aren't so much filters, but they're more effects. So you've got with this one, it's like a texturizer, so it gives it like a canvas effect. All of these are just a bit more artistic. You kind of play with the image. They're not really filters as such. It's just different effects that you can give to your images. They're not fantastic. I don't use them that much, but if you want to give some wacky effects, they're good. And the one that simulates the canvas effect is actually quite good. But one thing I'm going to show you, which is a free plugin that you can get for Photoshop. I'm not sure if it works as a standalone as well, but it's actually called Optic Verve Labs are the people that make it, and it's called Virtual Photographer. So if you go to Google and type in Virtual Photographer or Optic Verve Labs, you will come up with the website that gives you a free download, and it's well worth getting, and I'll show you why. It's free, it's very simple to use, very simple interface, but it's got quite a few effects that you can use on here. First of all, you've got a load of custom presets, so you can play about with these to your heart's content. If we look at that, we've got ambience, which adds a real kind of ambient effect. It brightens the highlights and everything. You've got dreamy effect, so it kind of washes out the image and gives it a bit of a blur. There's halo effect, which kind of gives a separate effect. There's loads. Sunset, we can add a sunset effect to it, so you can see it kind of darkens the image and gives it a kind of real evening glow. Then you go into the black and whites. You've got all different. You've got blue tone here, so you can hope you're seeing this. You've got a good blue tone there that looks quite nice. Flashback, quite a simple black and white but quite effective. Hollywood style, so it's quite deep and rich. Old newspaper to give it that old look. Paparazzi rosy. There's so many on there to start with from just those presets, so they're pretty good. So let's get rid of those. Then you've got different film speeds, so really all that's going to do is add grain. So if I went to 1600 and I went to 100%, you can see that it's added grain to the image. It's pretty good, but there are better ways of doing it, I think. So let's just knock that back to 25 if it works. In fact, let's turn that off. Let's cancel and start again. because the best ones are over here. You've got all these different photographic styles. You can add a slight touch of warmth and then obviously change the power of that. But you've also got these effects here, which are, if you like to shooting weddings and you like to add a real subtle soft touch to the photo, you can just use that soft part there and then increase the intensity or decrease the intensity just to add a real kind of small touch of softness to a wedding photo. And I've used that on many occasions. I quite like that. But then you've got the black and white effects here, again, even more. So you've got aged photos, you've got antique photos, you've got grape. There's all different sorts of colours and tones you can give to the photo. And it's pretty good. It's for free program. It's actually pretty good. And I've used it quite a lot in the past. So I'd recommend going to Virtual Photographer and downloading a copy of that because it's pretty good. The last one I've got that I use on Photoshop are, I've actually got all of Kevin Kabuto's action packs. If you go into the actions palette here, you can see I've got you do get default actions with Photoshop, but they're pretty rubbish. There's not really a lot there. But when you look at these artistic volumes, volume 1, 2, 3 and 4, if we look in volume 1, you've got all of these preset actions, black and white, color effects, creative effects, image correction. It's pretty good. In volume 2, you've got all these more black and white effects, and I've used new black and white on numerous occasions. I'll just show you that quickly. You've probably seen it before, but it gives a really nice kind of rich glow to the image, and it's something I've used on pretty much all of my weddings that I've shot. I love that action. Let's just revert that back. Let's have a look. Revert. Okay, and then you've also got in that, you've got more creative effects, image correction, so you've got your starburst vignette, things like that. Then you've got borders that you can put around it. Volume 3, you've got a whole load more of filters there, and then volume 4, even more. And there's all sorts of things like adding borders and images to your images, vignettes. There's just so much to them. And then you've got the production tools. They're really worth looking at. And there's a link at the end of this video. If you look underneath the video, there's a link to their website, and it's really worth having a look and getting hold of one of the action sets. If you do, I'd start off with action set 2 because it's got some fantastic actions in there. One of the best ones I use is I use the new black and white, but I also use, where are you? It's actually digital fill-in flash and smokeless burn. Fantastic for adding detail to images, and they are worth that money alone. Believe me, I've used them many times. So those are the 3 kind of things that you can use with Photoshop and how to add filter effects to images, and they're just brilliant, especially the free ones. Obviously because they're free, but they've also got a lot of filters in there that you can use on a daily basis. But that's Photoshop. Let's go into Lightroom quickly. Again, in Lightroom you get some, they're not called actions, they're called presets. And the great thing about Lightroom is when you hover your cursor over each preset, it shows you in the little box here what they're going to look like. So you've got aged, this is what come with Lightroom. You've got aged photo, antique grayscale, antique light, high contrast, low contrast, black and white, cold tones, canotypes, sepias. You just click on the photo, on the preset you want, and it comes up straight away. And once it's in there, you can actually adjust within. What's this, the signing in? You can actually adjust within. So if we turn down the brightness and everything, let's just close that. You can turn down the brightness, you can adjust it infinitely to your own taste. So once you've actually loaded a preset, you can change it and do whatever you want with it. So really you have got an infinite amount of variables that you can actually use with Lightroom. They have got quite a few already in place. Let's just get that back to normal. And then once again, I think for about £20, let's have a look where we're going. Let's go to develop. For about £20 or $20 I think it is, you can upgrade to Lightroom presets from Kabuto once again, and that gives you a whole host of new presets here that really, again, I've used on numerous occasions. It's too many to go through, but things like vignettes, quite nice to add to photos. It kind of leads your eye to the center of the photo. Another one I use on here is Snap. It adds a bit of punch and contrast to a photo. You can see it just adds that bit of contrast, and it really makes your images kind of punchy and bold. So they're worth getting, again, from the Kabuto site. If you use Lightroom, it's like using the actions, and they're pretty good. So again, you've got all those different filters and effects that you can use without having to put anything on the front of your lens. My theory is that you buy yourself a fantastic quality lens, or get the best you can afford, and then to put a filter on the front is kind of lowering the quality of that lens. If you can do that in Photoshop or Lightroom or some other editing software, if you can make that effect happen after you've taken the photo, then you're much better off doing that, because you're always left with the original image. But for, like I said, for things like a polarizer filter and starburst, then you do need the filter on front, and I would totally recommend the first filter you buy is a polarizing filter. And we've covered that throughout the course, and I'll cover it again later. But for now, if you have to buy one filter to put on the front of your lens, buy a circular polarizer filter and get the best you can afford. But I hope that helps. If you've got these programs, have a play with the filters and effects, but use them again sparingly. Don't use a whole wedding and use the same filter on every single photo. Try and work out what suits each photo, what effect suits each photo. As a quick example, I think for this one I would have used a black and white effect, and then I would have vignetted it. So let's have a look at a black and white, maybe something like a latte effect, and then I would have put the maximum vignette around the outside just to close it in, and then maybe put a frame around it in Photoshop. So, you know, look at a photo, see what effect it needs, and hopefully you'll have it in one of these software programs. But if you can, try and leave the camera clear. But I hope that helps. If you've got any questions, obviously you can get in touch, but just have a play with those and see how you get on.